Hello, my name is Linda Vickers and I'm Carolyn David with us today. How are you doing today, Carolyn?
I'm doing great, really great.
Good. The weather's warmed up and it's definitely summer, so we get out there and walk around and de-stress any way we can.
Exactly. Yeah, I
Yeah,
make do a park every day to do a walk, and it's been a lifesaver for me.
yeah, yeah, me
Mhm.
too. Just in the fresh air and being around nature. And
Yes,
I see you
nature,
posting stories about the neighborhood. It's ducks, isn't it, or geese?
geese.
It's
Yeah,
the
yeah,
Canada goose,
yeah.
for
I love.
sure. They're fun to, when the babies come. They're fun to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's nice to be able to have a bit of bird seed with you because they like, they've even eaten out of my hands.
Oh
That's
my
how.
God,
Yeah, they're just used to me coming and being with them. So yeah, and they trust me. So
you've become their friend.
yeah, it's a lot of fun. It
Oh,
really
that
brightens
is.
my, yeah,
Oh, for
for
sure,
sure.
that's fun. The
Mhm.
little family come and greet you when you come by.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah,
Well, I know, Carolyn, you have like a ton of stories, just being a missionary in the past, and we want to hear those at a later time. But today you wanted to focus specifically on one of your stories. So can you take us back to that time, where your story starts?
right. Yes, and I have been a missionary for a long time. It's over 20 years now, and so like you say, I do have a lot of stories,
Yeah.
and I've been to 49 different countries, and this particular story begins when I was in coming towards the end of a posting in South Africa. And I had realized that I was kind of feeling like I've been away from Canada for a long time. And I feel like I just need to have a rest. I need to take a break for a bit. And I thought going back to Canada would be the ticket to do that. So that's
Hmm.
exactly what I did. I booked my tickets to go back to Canada. I let my organization know that I was going to be leaving. And it was during that time I was living in South Africa, and I belonged to a group of people that was associated uh, with the organization. I was with the Youth with a Mission, and these people were connected also with Youth with a Mission, but also other organizations or churches they were with. And we used to gather on Saturday nights, and we would just have a wonderful time of fellowship together. We would worship, pray together, and just encourage and bless each other. So that was my fun event to look forward to it on the weekends, was doing that. So this one particular evening, I pulled my car up into the drive of where we were meeting, and I looked on the porch of the house, and there was a strange fellow there that I hadn't met before. And I thought to myself, "Gee, he looks Canadian." And then I thought to myself, "Why am I thinking that? Because what does Canadian look like? I mean, we're all different." And anyway, it turned out we did have a little conversation on the porch. He introduced himself, and he said, "Yeah, I'm from Calgary." So I thought, "Oh, I was right. Yeah, my intuition was correct." So we hit it off. He was very congenial and seemed to be a very nice person. And I definitely, at the time, I thought, "Gee, I'd like to get to know this guy a little bit better. It seems kind of strange that we should meet here in South Africa, so far away from home, and kind of what's going on." And so, but I said to myself, I am not going to ask for his number or anything like that. I'm not going to appear forward. I didn't feel like that was my place. But sure enough, at the end of the meeting, he came up to me and he said, I'm here for a certain period of time, and I'd love to have coffee with you." So I thought, "Oh, okay." This is working out. And the next morning, I actually, in my prayer time with God, I said, "What's going on here? Why have I met this person at this time?" And God said to me, "Go for it. Don't hold back. like, I was a very cautious person. And because of past experiences, and also my second husband had passed away, there's a lot of emotional things involved. And so I was very cautious, let's say, about relationships with the opposite sex. And I just never even had a relationship since my husband passed away. And this was like 6 years later. So,
You learn to be
uh,
careful.
yeah, just careful, cautious about relationship, and always wanting to do things the appropriate way, and not be forward and things like that. So, yeah, I felt as a leader in the organization I was working with, that that was part of my responsibility and character as a person, right, and integrity. So that was very important to me. Anyway, so we talked again. We met again, and we had a beautiful time together. He shared a bit more personal stuff about himself, and it just seemed like we were clicking right away. He was sort of on the prophetic side of things, and so was I. So in that respect, praying together always felt very yeah, we were on the same page. So that was another indicator that things were good. And both being of similar age, and different experiences, being involved with church and leadership in church and things like that. So anyway, it just was I can't go into all the details, but I must tell you that God really spoke to me. And actually, I wrote all of this in a book called Safe, The Devil You Know. This book is on Amazon, so you can actually look it up. And if you want to download the ebook, it's very inexpensive. It's not a huge book, as you can see. It's very thin, but most people say that when they start reading it, they cannot put it down. So they have to find out what happens in the end. And I'm not going to spoil that story for you. I'm going to not tell you the whole story, but just yeah, I'll just try to give you the skeleton details of what happened. So I still had a bunch of commitments that I needed to fulfill. I needed to go to Mali. I needed to go teaching in some schools in South Africa and in Lesotho, and so I he went back home to Canada. He went home to let his family know what had happened, that we had just met, and so on. And he then called me back at the end of January to say that he asked me to marry him. And at that point, I mean, as
Wow.
far as I was concerned, there was no reason
Wow.
at that point to ever think, that would be a difficulty or whatever. I just felt like, wow, this is God working out here. I thought I was going back home as a missionary back to Canada as a single person, and now it looks like we're going to be married. So we made arrangements to he went back to Canada, like I say, and he said, okay, I'm going to fly back and then we'll get married. So it was it was the beginning of March, and I had made all the arrangements with the church in the city I was staying in, and everybody helped out. Friends that I knew, fellow YWAMers, were all, together in this. There was a little group of us, say about, I don't know, maybe 30 people all together. So it was quite a small affair, but a very beautiful wedding. And honestly felt like, wow, God, you are so amazing. You have just brought this beautiful man into my life, who now we're going to live out the next years of our lives as missionaries together. Yes, we would be in Canada for part of the year, for 6 months of the year. And then because his work was seasonal, so this was perfect.
Yeah.
And then we would spend the next 6 months of the year doing some kind of mission work. So
So
that was
just to stop you for a second there, Carolyn, some people may not know what YWAM is.
Oh, okay.
So that's Youth with a Mission. It's
Yes.
worldwide, and it includes adults as well.
Yes,
Is that right?
absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, focuses on training young people for mission work, but actually there are many different age groups, young people, older people, and I believe the founder himself is probably getting, if he's not in his 80s, he might be very close to being in his 80s. So
Okay, I
yeah,
just wanted to fill in the blank there in case
yeah,
anybody didn't know. Yeah.
yeah, it's a youth movement, but of course we have, trainers and educators and teachers and so on that
Yeah.
that speak at the schools, and so they're older, some of
Yeah.
them.
So
And yeah,
your wedding.
yes, yeah, it was a beautiful affair. We had just a small barbecue for our close friends. They call them a braai in South Africa. So we had a braai at a friend's house. And yeah, it all worked out very perfectly. And because South Africa, their monetary system is very beneficial for anybody coming from other places like Europe or America, to because the money exchange is so much better for Canadian money. And so we ended up having a month honeymoon and going to beautiful places.
Wow.
South Africa is such a wonderful country. We explored, we hiked, we went to the beach. It was just a beautiful time. And it seemed like everywhere we went, we had favor, just absolute favor. And we would speak to our waitresses they'd be in tears because we'd be giving them prophetic words about their lives. And they'd just be, wow, how did you know that? How, and so we were kind of living the dream, let's say, because
Yep.
I love that kind of stuff. I love being able to uh, have people encounter God. Yeah.
Yeah. And encourage them with God's word.
Exactly. Yeah. So anyway, it honeymoon over, time to go back, to Canada and join in with what was going on in that side of the world. And so we flew into Calgary and came to his apartment, which the apartment building was beautiful. I mean, it was fairly new. The apartment inside had granite countertops and dishwasher. It was a very well set out apartment. But the first little twig of, ooh, what's this? was when I stepped into the apartment, and all the furniture in there, at least most of the furniture, was just, it looked like it had come from a thrift store. And
Okay.
yeah, in the center.
And he had told you he was financially okay.
Financially, he was fine, and he had a good job. He made he made a lot of money every month when he was working, and his work was seasonal. So in the summers, he would make very, very good money because he was working in the oil and gas industry. And so they make tons of money. And also that he said he had investments that he had put away for the future. And so I never even considered anything that he was telling me wasn't true. He's a Christian man. He's been a leader in the church. So,
so why would you doubt that?
Why would I doubt that? So anyway, as it turned out, about 3 weeks of, that little niggling feeling, I thought, you know what? We're going to buy new furniture. We're not going to live in a thrift store. We're going to, we'll talk about it and things will get better. The thing is, sometimes, those little gut feelings that you should really go with, right? You should really, anyway, a few weeks later, and we had decided that I would take a year off because I just needed some respite time. I had gone through burnout. And so I needed just a quiet space, just, to do stuff for myself. Because when you're in missions, you're constantly giving out. And it was time for me to just sit down, receive, and fill up my cup once again. So,
and rest.
Yeah,
let your system and your body catch up with what you've been doing and just rest.
Yeah. So, he was sitting in the little office that was in our apartment. There was a tiny little space for a bit of a desk and his computer and stuff. And I was sitting out in the living room area with my feet up and reading a book. And he flew around that corner. I don't know what was going on in that room before that happened, but he I don't know, maybe he was looking up his bank accounts and realizing that, his money was going down, down, down. Anyway, whatever triggered it, he came flying around the corner of that room and into the living room and just started screaming at me and, using swear words, which floored me because, yeah, I'm not around that crowd. I'm not used to hearing the F bombs coming out of somebody's mouth, and particularly not your husband that you just married.
Yeah.
And you're going to be living in harmony for the rest of your life now. This was a real wake up call. I mean, I felt my stomach like drop to the floor. I was so shocked about what was going on. So, basically he was saying to me, you need to give me some money. You need to pay. I have a huge Visa bill or MasterCard, whatever it was. And he said, you need to give me the money to pay this off. And I could tell he was not going to take no for an answer. This was very threatening behavior, and fists clenched by his side and screaming at me. And so I felt very intimidated.
Mhm.
I felt shocked. This just didn't happen once. This happened many times. So, yeah, I don't want to get too down into details because I think that's gonna, there's much more of the story to tell. But that was just my initial shock of who I was seeing this person for who they really were.
Mhm.
Because whatever he had been playing at during that whole few first months of our marriage was obviously a very good act. And he knew exactly what to say to me and how to convince me that there were things that I, as a woman, would want to hear to feel secure, to feel protected, to feel provided for. So he knew all that. He was very good at that, manipulating things to make it sound very wonderful. So then began this journey of understanding that what I had just fallen into. I'd fallen into quicksand of abuse, and I didn't understand it. I'd never been around people like that. I had never experienced the depth of even maybe the demonic attachments that were to that anger, and the experiences I had in the spirit realm during this relationship were really, some of them unbelievable. And just those different kinds of experiences that I went through were really incredible. But one thing that I have to say, that despite all of the difficulties, all of the new challenges I was going through as a person who'd never experienced this before in her life, God was with me. I knew that if I would just quiet myself and come out of the
Fear.
the fear and the trauma that was being created around me every day, that I could quiet myself. I could hear what God was saying to me. And that's basically how this book isn't just about somebody, being brutal or bullying somebody. It's the story of how God interwove his directions for me, whether it was through dreams, through scriptures that I read, through just different ways that God spoke to me in such profound ways. And in one of those ways was almost at the very beginning of this happening, he had told me, go to Bethel Church. They will help you. And I knew he was talking about the church in Redding, California,
Mhm.
because I had it in my heart to visit that church anyway. And God just brought it up again. He brought it up again to me about going down and how they would help me. And they definitely did. I mean, the information, the atmosphere at the church, the teaching, They just happened to be doing a series about women and how vital women are in the body of Christ. So all of this information was all being chalked up to making me feel like, okay, what's happening to me is absolutely wrong. There is no way that I am at fault for any of this.
Yeah.
And even if someone is trying to convince you it's your fault, if you would just behave in this way and that way, well, this wouldn't happen.
And I remember Graham Cook would always say, in every situation, who does God want to be in that for you in that situation?
Yeah.
So it, like every situation's different, but who does he want to be?
Yeah.
He wants to be faithful. He wants you to know him as his refuge.
Yeah, exactly. And I knew after a number of months, let's say after I hung in there, because remember, God told me, go for it. Don't hold back. So I knew I had this mandate to be in this relationship, regardless of what was going on, which might seem strange to people.
And that would have been confusing for you too.
Exactly. Very confusing. I'm like, God, okay, there's a purpose for me being here. I don't get it, but I do know that you're with me and that you're helping me in this somehow. And I will be free from this relationship. I got to that point where I knew that, okay, this can't go on any longer. And that was the day I was attacked. I was actually physically attacked in our mobile home. And there was a line that was crossed that day. And I just knew, okay, this is not getting better. It's getting worse. And now he's attacking me and I'm on the ground and he's trying to subdue me. I mean, he would do things like grab me around the wrists and squeeze, like, I even had incidences that I wrote down in my journal that I couldn't remember that they even happened. That's how traumatic they were for me. If you're a person that's used to that kind of behavior, and being, rough and tumble and with other people, it might seem like not as traumatic, but I was never in situations where I had to physically fight for anything or be physical. So this was way beyond my scope and above, I mean, it was never on my radar as a person. So it was completely new to me. But you were mentioning about how God speaks to us and how he wants to step in to our situations. And this was one of our visits to Bethel Church. I had an encounter with Jesus, and I just want to share that. This is in my book, but it's so significant what happened that I really feel it's important. And it's just a few lines here, but I just wanted to read that as an encouragement to those who are wondering if they're in a situation that it's so out of control for them, and they really don't know what to do, that really, truly God is with you. And this is how Jesus revealed himself. So I just said that one significant encounter happened on Christmas Eve. We were invited by the worship leader, and this was in that church, Bethel Church in Redding, to close our eyes and focus on Jesus. As soon as my eyes were closed, I was taken into a vision. I saw myself at the bottom of some wide stairs, like a stage. I was clothed in a beautifully sequined floor-length gown, beige in color. Jesus was standing at a higher level. He was beckoning me to climb up to him, and he had his hand outstretched to reach mine. He was in a top coat and top hat and trousers like Fred Astaire would have worn. Isn't that interesting? And as I reached out my hand, he pulled me to the top of the stairs, and we were standing at the front of the stage on top of some really odd-shaped, lumpy things. There was a regular-looking brown tarp covering the stage, and I asked, "What are we standing on?" Jesus pulled back a little bit of the edge of the tarp and said, The treasure of your life is here.
Ah,
All I could see were piles of valuables like gold plates, dishes, vases, gold coins, and indescribably valuable items. Jesus said to me, every kind word, deed, and blessings for others have all been gathered. Then he pulled the tarp back in its place and said, we're not going to focus on that right now. He seemed excited to show me what he had for me next. He had a huge smile on his face as he led me to a spot at the back of the stage. We walked over to a sizable vase, almost as tall as me. It was clear glass with a narrow neck and a wide bottom. This vase is full of your tears, he said. This is what he was so excited about. Every tear
wow.
I had ever cried was there, saved. The teary substance, as I peered closer, was like the tiny silvery flakes that you see in sparkly glue in the hobby shops. Then the vision ended as abruptly as it started, and I found myself back in the seat in the auditorium of Bethel Church with the sounds of beautiful worship all surrounding me. Tears were flowing down my cheeks and still come when I read the story or tell it to others. And there is an actual scripture that does say that God saves all of our tears in a
Yeah.
bottle. Actually, a couple of years back, I was in Jordan for some training and ministry. And I was living in Amman for 3 months. And I went to a museum and I actually saw those tear collectors they had made out of glass in their museum. And they were that same shape with the narrow, top and
Really?
the wide bottom. Yes. And they were called tear catchers. Yeah.
Wow.
So tears are considered very valuable in that culture. And I don't think we understand that the way they do, but yeah, definitely. I was astonished and amazed when I saw these things. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So how did you how were you able to leave this relationship?
Okay. Well, there was a weekend. We were in Cochrane, Alberta, and we were staying in our motorhome at the time. And there had been a few incidences where it seemed like things were building, because that's what happens is there's this
Yeah.
honeymoon period, and then there's the build-up period, and then there's the explosion. And I knew we were in the build-up, and there was such tension. And I tried to actually, I went to a library and I started looking up on their computers. I started looking up safe houses, and actually was able to call a few of them. And it was a long weekend. It was the July 1st long weekend, and so a lot of them were full of people, because I think yeah, I don't think I mentioned it in the book, but Calgary has one of the highest domestic violence in Canada. It is known. So a lot of on the weekends like this, where there might be a lot of drinking and whatever going on, there's a lot of domestic violence. So the safe houses were full. They were full. And so this was disheartening for me. So I went back to the RV and I knew, okay, God, you are going to have to set this up. I can't see it happening any other way. I don't know what to do now. And sure enough, I think it was the next day, one of Charles's friends came over. He was a pastor. He worked part-time as a pastor, and then he worked part-time as in another job. And so he was on his lunch break. He came over to our vehicle. He said, you know what? God just put it in my heart that I needed to see you guys today. And so I didn't even know if you were in this mobile home park, but I found you. How exciting. And I just looked at him and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, this is it.
Yeah.
This is the moment. And so as he sat down, was having his lunch, I just, it all started coming out, and all my husband could do was just like just say the F word over and over and over again, because he knew the cat was coming out of the bag. And
he'd been exposed. Yep.
Yeah. So, yep. So anyway, Charles was so upset by what happened. He grabbed a jacket and some stuff and he left the RV. And so I was really panicking, because that's the worst time, is when an abuser's been outed. They can do some very, dangerous things. And this is sometimes what happens is this is when people can get partners. Yeah, they can get hurt or killed or whatever. So yeah, that kind of made me very nervous that he had left. But at the same time, the pastors, he had already left and said, I got to go back to work. Thank you so much for, having me here, but I need to go back to work. And I'm like, no, don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
Anyway, he left, but in a few seconds, my phone rang, because he must have immediately called his wife to invite me for coffee. So my phone rang and I answered it, and it was his wife inviting me to their place for coffee. He knew I needed help. So I went over there, and Charles had already been calling him and asking if we could park our motorhome at their home for a couple of days, because he had obviously planned to be away for that weekend, and didn't tell me about it, but he was going to some kind of conference in the States. And so he was heading out anyway. And so we parked the vehicle and I was safe because Charles was gone. We didn't even say goodbye. He didn't look around, nothing. He just left in his truck, and I settled myself into the pastor's home with him and his wife, and all the stories started coming out. And so the very next day I packed up as much of my items that I could think that I would need. And I certainly couldn't pack up everything that belonged to me, but I was hoping at a future date to be able to pack up the rest. And that's when I left. And that's not the end of the story. A lot of things happened even after that, but
you got out.
Yeah, I got out. That's the thing.
And that's the most important part, is that we talk to somebody. If anybody anybody who's listening to this, if you're in a situation and you're in a relationship, talk to somebody. And if they don't, and if they aren't able to help you, talk to somebody else. You need to keep safe.
For me,
that's what this is all about. It's so important to keep safe.
Yes. In my case, I had no friends there in Calgary. I had no people that I could talk to about what was happening.
God did connect you and position you to be connected to this pastor.
And
pastor's wife. So
yeah, it was so interesting that it was his friend that was able to help and get me out of that terrible pit that I'd fallen into.
God will rescue. He sets the captives free in many ways.
He does. He does. So.
Well, we're just about out of time here, Carolyn. Mm-hmm. So I was there any, like, what did you learn from this part of your life? What was the big thing that you learned?
Big takeaway is God works everything for good. That became my life scripture that I stood on even after I left and was feeling so humiliated and ashamed by what had happened to me. And
that's a lie too.
Yeah, exactly. God had to say to me, and he had to say, this is not who, I created you to be. And your life is more valuable to me than what happened to you. What happened to you is what happened to you. It's not who God created you to be. Right. So my value, I realize, comes from God and what he has intended, and not about those circumstances that happened to me, which was a very powerful thing, that God spoke to me during that time. Yeah.
And that is powerful. I mean, everybody's got stuff, and just to recognize, a lot of times we'll hear the voices in our head, but it's just the lies.
Mm-hmm.
and to remember who our identity is,
Yeah.
and who God created us to be.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Very good.
yeah, I feel like almost immediately after I left, I began to encounter other women who had been in difficult situations in relationships that were hurting them. And so it's just been a steady, I don't know what you call it, sideline ministry for me, to be dealing with people who are in abusive situations. And so helping them, telling them, like, I'm a little bit further along the road from you, and I've come
Yeah.
past it. I've gone beyond it. I had a horrible uh, time at times, feeling so betrayed about what happened to me and totally undone. And I feel like God just kind of took me to the bottom of who I am and began to rebuild me into the truths of who he says I am, and not what my circumstances tell me.
Yeah.
So
And it's like the story of the tapestry, where the front of it is beautiful, but it's all the stuff that's at the back that's all messed up, and the dark
yeah,
colors and the knots and everything else. But the front
yeah,
is the beautiful part that
uh,
that ends, that's the end result. So
right.
even though we have to go through all the crap, um,
Hmm.
there's often it does create a new compassion and
Yeah,
empathy, that we're able to serve and love others in a new way.
that's exactly right. Yeah, exactly. And honestly, when I used to read these stories in magazines, I think, what was wrong with those people? Why didn't they see what was happening?
Yeah,
So it kind of makes
because
you
they're in
think.
it.
Yeah,
a lot of
exactly.
time a lot of times a lot of times women don't recognize it when they're in it.
No,
It's when they've gotten out of it that
yeah,
it becomes obvious. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Well, I
It's the most.
really thank you for sharing
Mm,
that today, Carolyn. And um, again, if anyone's listening, please get help.
yeah.
Um, and just thank you for your time today.
Hmm.
It's a tough story. It's a tough part of your life to have to go through all that. And again, if anyone wants to check out Carolyn's book, it's called Safe,
Yeah.
and it's yeah, Safe, and it's on Amazon. So,
Yes.
okay. Thanks again. And yeah, well, have a good day.
Yeah. Thanks, Linda. My
And
pleasure. My
just
pleasure.
bringing hope. Just thank you for just releasing hope for
Hmm.
a lot of women.
Yeah. Amen.
Okay. Thanks again. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.